At the moment the doctor stopped speaking, Anna stopped listening, because numbers like months lose meaning when death becomes conversational. She walked out of the hospital with a folded prognosis in her bag and a decision already forming. Not about treatment, but about direction. She did not want machines, countdowns, or whispered apologies. She wanted motion. Within 48 hours, she sold her car, resigned from her job, and booked a one-way ticket to a country she had never seen, only felt. The Philippines was not chosen for logic. It appeared in her mind like a memory she had not lived yet. Friends assumed she was running away. Anna understood she was arriving somewhere early. She carried pain quietly, hiding it behind curiosity, behind maps bookmarked at midnight. She told no one about the timeline. Airports became confessionals where strangers smiled without knowing why. When the plane lifted, fear followed, but something else rose with it, a sense that time had stopped chasing her. She was not escaping death. She was interrupting it. That interruption would change strangers, traditions, and her understanding of endings in ways she could never have predicted before boarding that flight alone and awake inside. Anna landed without ceremony, without plans, and without telling the truth to the taxi driver who asked why she came. She said she wanted to see islands, which was accurate enough. What she did not say was that her body hurt in unfamiliar rhythms, or that each breath felt borrowed. She rented a room near the water because the sound at night felt like something ancient breathing with her. Days passed uncounted. She stopped marking time by calendars and started measuring it by conversations. Vendors learned her name. Children corrected her pronunciation and laughed when she tried again. Pain followed her, but it softened, as if confused by the humidity and noise. She noticed how people spoke openly about loss, about relatives who left and returned as stories. Death here was not hidden behind doors. It was acknowledged, argued with, remembered loudly. Anna began writing letters she never mailed, describing colors she could not explain. She ate slowly, tasting meals like conclusions. Doctors still existed in her phone, unread messages blinking politely. She ignored them. She believed, briefly, that ignoring something could reduce its power. That belief would be tested soon, in a way that had nothing to do with medicine or miracles. The man who noticed her shaking was named Mateo, and he did not ask questions immediately. He offered tea, then silence, which felt more generous than concern. Mateo had lost a wife years earlier and spoke of her as if she had simply stepped into another room. He worked nights and listened more than he spoke. Anna found herself telling him pieces of the truth in the wrong order, mentioning pain before prognosis, fear before numbers. He did not correct her sequence. Instead, he told her about his village in the north, where illness was not fought, but negotiated with, where elders spoke to their bodies like stubborn relatives. Anna laughed at that, then cried unexpectedly, embarrassed by the sound. Mateo did not touch her. He said leaving space was sometimes the most respectful act. Over days, she followed him to places not on maps, gatherings without announcements. She noticed how no one rushed her. Her sickness was not centered. It was accommodated. This unsettled her more than pity ever had. For the first time, Anna wondered if she had misunderstood what the 6 months meant, and whether she had misread the instructions entirely. News of her condition did not spread quickly, but when it did, it changed nothing outwardly and everything internally. Someone told her she should visit a healer. Someone else warned her not to. Anna went anyway, less out of hope and more out of narrative curiosity. The healer did not promise recovery. He asked what she was afraid of forgetting. The question irritated her. She wanted something concrete, measurable, dramatic. Instead, she was handed responsibility. Afterward, she felt foolish for expecting spectacle. Weeks passed. Her pain flared, retreated, returned differently. She stopped updating anyone back home. Not out of secrecy, but because the language felt insufficient. How could she explain that she felt more alive while actively dying? How could she say that fear no longer arrived alone? It brought gratitude behind it, then anger, then peace, sometimes in the same afternoon. Anna realized she had spent years preparing for a future she was now exempt from. That exemption felt illegal, like cheating a system she had followed obediently. Yet nobody here seemed interested in enforcing that system. They were too busy living around her, not for her. The call from her sister came at the wrong time, which made it the right time. The voice on the line sounded panicked, rehearsed, loving, all at once. Anna listened without interrupting, then said she was not coming home. The silence afterward felt heavier than any argument. She explained she was not giving up, but redefining what fighting looked like. Her sister cried. Anna did not. After the call, she sat with the discomfort instead of drowning it. Matteo later told her that choosing peace often looked selfish to people still negotiating fear. That night, Anna dreamed of her childhood kitchen, of laughter trapped in walls. She woke aching but calm. She began volunteering at a small school, teaching English badly, learning patience well. Children asked about her scars without lowering their voices. She answered honestly, without drama. Her body weakened, but her days expanded. She learned when to rest without apologizing. The future stopped feeling like a threat and started feeling like a rumor. One afternoon, she collapsed briefly and woke surrounded by strangers who treated her not as fragile, but as present. Presence, she realized, was the rarest offering she had ever received. Recovery was never promised, yet something unexpected occurred quietly, without announcement. Her numbers shifted. Not dramatically, not enough to rewrite textbooks, but enough to complicate certainty. A local doctor noticed and suggested tests. Anna declined at first, afraid that measurement would steal something intangible she had gained. Eventually, curiosity overcame superstition. The results confused everyone, including her. She was still sick. That part remained. But the speed of decline had slowed, like a storm reconsidering its direction. She did not celebrate. She did not announce it. She simply continued living exactly as she had planned to die. Matteo joked that death disliked being ignored. Anna considered that deeply. She wrote again, this time stories instead of letters. Stories about moments that did not resolve neatly. She wondered if meaning required closure at all. People came and went from her life with surprising ease. She learned that permanence was overrated, consistency far more valuable. Some nights were terrible. She screamed into towels, negotiated with nothing. Other mornings felt borrowed from someone kinder. She understood then that survival was not the opposite of dying. It was a parallel process. The Philippines had not cured her body. It had dismantled her fear, piece by piece, without asking permission. Months passed, then surpassed their original estimate, quietly embarrassing the prediction that had sent her running. Anna did not feel triumphant. She felt accountable. To whom, she was unsure. She returned to the hospital only once, not as a patient, but as a visitor to someone newly afraid. The woman clutched Anna's hand, desperate for certainty. Anna offered none. She spoke instead about how fear shrinks when shared and lies when isolated. She did not mention miracles. She mentioned people. Matteo watched from the doorway, understanding that some conversations did not require witnesses. Later, he asked if she regretted not going home. Anna thought carefully. She missed people, not places. She had discovered that belonging could be temporary and still authentic. She sent her sister recordings instead of updates, laughter instead of timelines. Her sister stopped asking when she would return. That felt like acceptance or maybe surrender. Anna's body remained unpredictable. She learned to plan days loosely, allowing collapse without self-betrayal. She stopped referring to herself as dying. She used the word living with conditions. Language mattered more than medicine sometimes. She had chosen the Philippines for an ending. What she found was a middle that refused to behave. The anniversary of her diagnosis arrived unnoticed until sunset reminded her. She marked it by cooking for strangers, something she had once feared. Her hands shook, but the meal worked. She watched people eat without knowing why she cared so deeply about their approval. That realization amused her. Approval no longer mattered, but connection still did. A traveler recognized her accent and asked how long she was staying. Anna said she did not know. The answer felt luxurious. That night, pain returned aggressively, reminding her not to romanticize progress. She spent hours awake, bargaining with memories with breath. At dawn, Matteo sat beside her without speaking. She did not need reassurance. She needed company. She understood then that the story she had been telling herself was incomplete. It was not about choosing where to die. It was about choosing how to remain while dying was possible. That distinction mattered. She recorded a message for herself, speaking to a future she might never meet. She spoke gently, without instructions. She realized she no longer feared disappearing. She feared disengaging. As long as she stayed engaged, the rest felt negotiable. The Philippines had taught her that endurance did not require permanence, only participation. Anna eventually returned home, not as a farewell, but as a visit. Doctors struggled to categorize her. Friends struggled to understand her calm. She did not try to translate it. She had learned that some truths resisted transport. She stayed briefly, said what mattered, avoided what did not. When asked why the Philippines, she never answered directly. She spoke instead about listening differently, about choosing curiosity over panic, about refusing to let fear organize her calendar. People heard inspiration. Anna heard distortion. She left again quietly, returning to the life that no longer felt like an escape. Her illness remained, but it had lost narrative dominance. She was not a patient visiting paradise. She was a person living honestly in borrowed time. The prognosis eventually expired, unfulfilled. Anna did not frame it. She recycled the paper years later without ceremony. She never claimed victory. She claimed agency. That choice continued shaping her days long after the threat had softened. She still hurt. She still rested. She still wondered how many moments remained. But the question no longer paralyzed her. She had already lived beyond the ending she was given. Everything else felt like grace, unearned and fully accepted, without explanation or apology. People often wanted her story to resolve neatly, with a lesson or a cure. Anna resisted that framing. She understood now that meaning was not a destination but a method. The Philippines had not saved her life in the way stories preferred. It had returned it to her hands. She continued to move between places, maintaining relationships without ownership. Matteo remained part of her world, not as an anchor, but as a witness. They did not promise forever. They promised honesty. Her body fluctuated. Some years were harder, some easier. She measured success by her willingness to remain present during both. She spoke publicly rarely, privately often. When newly diagnosed strangers reached out, she did not offer advice. She offered companionship. She never suggested travel as medicine. She suggested choice as resistance. Her story circulated imperfectly, misquoted, simplified. She allowed it. Control was no longer her priority. Engagement was. On quiet nights, she still heard waves in her memory, reminding her that time was fluid, not linear. She had chosen the Philippines believing she was choosing an ending. Instead, she had chosen authorship. The difference changed everything. She never forgot that the decision was made under fear. She was proud not of her courage, but of her honesty in admitting she wanted something different than survival alone. That honesty remained her greatest inheritance. The months that followed refused to align with any narrative arc Anna recognized. There was no steady climb toward wellness, no dramatic relapse demanding closure. Instead, life arrived unevenly like radio signals cutting in and out. She learned to accept inconsistency as evidence of honesty rather than failure. When people asked how long she had left, she answered with stories instead of numbers. Some listened. Some waited for statistics. She stopped accommodating the latter. Her body demanded renegotiation daily. She obliged without resentment. She noticed that people treated time differently around her, compressing conversations, rushing kindness. She slowed them down by asking unnecessary questions. It worked. She became interested in ordinary things again, the kind that once felt trivial. laundry, errands, waiting. She found dignity in maintenance. Her sister visited once, carrying fear disguised as optimism. They spoke openly, without repair. That openness survived departure. Anna returned again to the Philippines not because it felt safe, but because it felt true. Familiarity had replaced novelty, and that felt like commitment. She understood now that choosing a place repeatedly mattered more than discovering it once. Her illness remained unspectacular, which felt merciful. She did not need proof that life was meaningful. She needed continuity. That was something she could still practice deliberately. At some point, Anna stopped referencing the diagnosis at all. It became background noise, like traffic heard from a distance. She did not deny its presence. She simply refused to let it speak first. She began mentoring younger women navigating decisions that felt too large. She never framed herself as an example. She framed herself as a participant. That distinction kept ego from contaminating intention. Mateo noticed the shift before she did. He said she no longer spoke like someone borrowing time. She considered that carefully. Borrowing implied obligation. She no longer felt indebted to the future. She lived in collaboration with uncertainty instead. That collaboration required constant adjustment. She canceled plans without guilt. She pursued others without hesitation. Her energy fluctuated. Her commitment did not. When pain demanded isolation, she complied. When relief returned, she re-entered without explanation. People learned not to question the rhythm. That trust mattered. She discovered that predictability was overrated. Reliability was different. She could be relied upon to be honest, even when absent. She wrote fewer reflections and more questions. The answers interested her less than the asking. The Philippines had not changed her fate. It had changed her posture toward it. That posture became her most durable strength. Anna eventually realized that people were learning from her in ways she never intended. That realization made her cautious. She corrected exaggerations gently. She dismantled hero narratives quickly. She did not survive because she was brave. She survived because life allowed it. That humility preserved her integrity. When asked what she would do differently, she spoke about listening sooner, about choosing discomfort intentionally, about allowing fear to inform decisions without commanding them. She refused to claim insight she had earned accidentally. Her illness continued to complicate plans. She accepted that complication as evidence of participation. She noticed how often people waited for permission to live fully. She offered none. She only modeled consent. Her relationship with Mateo evolved without definition. They avoided labels not out of fear, but out of respect for change. They trusted continuity more than certainty. When her body weakened again, she did not retreat emotionally. She expanded communication instead. That choice deepened bonds rather than straining them. She learned that vulnerability was not exposure. It was accuracy. She stopped protecting people from her reality. They adapted. That adaptation surprised her. She had underestimated others' capacity for truth. The prognosis faded into irrelevance not because it was wrong, but because it no longer mattered. She was no longer waiting to see if life continued. She was actively continuing it herself, regardless of outcome. There were setbacks severe enough to challenge her philosophy. Hospital rooms returned. Tests resumed. The familiar language of caution re-entered her life. Anna listened carefully without surrendering authorship. She agreed to treatment selectively, not reactively. That agency confused some professionals. She accepted the confusion without explanation. She was no longer interested in convincing anyone. What mattered was alignment. During one prolonged recovery, she recorded daily audio reflections, not for an audience, but for coherence. She wanted to hear herself think honestly. Listening back, she noticed how fear appeared less frequently than expected. Fatigue dominated. So did clarity. She recognized that suffering was not her primary obstacle. Confusion was. She addressed confusion with attention rather than urgency. That approach slowed everything down. People waited. Some left. Others stayed. The ones who stayed mattered more. When she was able to travel again, she returned to familiar places, not seeking novelty. Repetition comforted her. It signaled durability. She no longer framed her life as extraordinary. She framed it as intentional. That distinction grounded her. She accepted that the story would not conclude with a lesson neatly packaged. It would conclude whenever it concluded. Until then, she focused on fidelity to her values rather than longevity. That focus simplified decisions. It also made them heavier. She carried that weight willingly. Anna began declining invitations to speak publicly about illness. The questions felt repetitive. The framing felt restrictive. She preferred private conversations where nuance survived. In those spaces, she admitted doubt freely. She admitted anger. She admitted moments of exhaustion, so complete they felt existential. People responded with relief. Honesty proved contagious. She watched others reevaluate their assumptions about strength. She watched herself do the same. Strength, she realized, was not endurance. It was adaptability without self-betrayal. That realization reframed everything. She returned to writing, not to document survival, but to interrogate meaning. Her work avoided conclusions. Editors disliked that. Readers appreciated it quietly. She accepted the trade-off. Matteo encouraged her independence without withdrawing support. That balance mattered. They disagreed often. Disagreement strengthened trust rather than threatening it. Her health stabilized again, unpredictably. She learned not to announce improvement prematurely. Celebration invited pressure. She chose gratitude instead. She noticed how often people postponed living until certainty arrived. She resisted advising them. Advice implied authority. She preferred companionship. When her sister visited again, they spoke about the future cautiously, without guarantees. That caution felt respectful rather than pessimistic. Anna understood now that hope did not require optimism. It required engagement. She remained engaged. That choice did not eliminate fear. It contextualized it. Fear became information rather than instruction. That shift marked the most significant transformation of her life, more than any medical development ever could. Time eventually reclaimed its ambiguity. Years passed unevenly. Anna stopped counting them. She marked life by relationships sustained, by values practiced under pressure. Her body aged faster than expected in some ways, slower in others. She accepted the inconsistency. Medical professionals continued monitoring without narrative conclusions. She appreciated their restraint. She moved fluidly between countries, never staying long enough to claim permanence. She preferred contribution over settlement. Wherever she went, she built routines quickly. Routines stabilized her without trapping her. She remained alert to complacency. Complacency resembled surrender too closely. When asked if she feared dying now, she answered honestly. Sometimes. Usually at night. Usually alone. Fear had not vanished. It had become manageable. She spoke to it directly rather than disguising it as productivity. That conversation prevented panic. She maintained contact with people she had met briefly, but intensely. Those connections reminded her that impact did not require duration. She learned to exit relationships gracefully, without dramatic closure. That skill mattered more as her energy fluctuated. Matteo remained present without expectation. They allowed each other freedom without detachment. That balance defied explanation. Anna stopped trying to explain it. Explanation felt unnecessary. She trusted lived experience instead. The Philippines remained a reference point, not a refuge. It represented a decision made honestly under pressure. That honesty continued guiding her, long after the initial urgency faded. She did not know how long life would continue. She knew how she intended to participate while it did. Eventually, Anna was asked whether she regretted not pursuing every possible treatment aggressively. The question surprised her with its persistence. She considered it carefully each time. Regret implied comparison. Comparison required alternate outcomes. She did not live in alternates. She lived in alignment. That distinction ended the conversation politely. She acknowledged uncertainty without revisiting decisions. Revisiting felt destabilizing. She had chosen a method of living that allowed adjustment without reversal. That mattered. When new symptoms emerged, she addressed them pragmatically. When improvement followed, she accepted it cautiously. Extremes no longer appealed to her. She valued steadiness. She noticed how people often sought dramatic transformation to justify change. She had changed quietly instead. That quiet change endured. She did not announce milestones. She experienced them privately. She learned that internal shifts rarely benefited from public validation. Matteo once asked if she felt complete. The question unsettled her. Completion implied finality. She did not seek finality. She sought continuity. She told him she felt coherent. That felt accurate. Coherence allowed contradiction without collapse. Her illness remained unresolved. She accepted that unresolved conditions could still host meaningful lives. She wrote less frequently now, but with more precision. Each word felt deliberate. She avoided metaphors about battles or journeys. Those metaphors no longer fit. She described life as collaboration. Collaboration with uncertainty. Collaboration with limitation. Collaboration with time itself. That framing sustained her more than hope ever had. It required daily recommitment. She recommitted willingly. The original story others told about Anna no longer matched her reality. She did not correct it publicly. Stories belonged to tellers once released. She focused on living beyond narrative ownership. That freedom felt earned. When strangers approached her with reverence, she redirected gently. She asked about them instead. That redirection dissolved hierarchy. She wanted equality, not admiration. Her health fluctuated again significantly, forcing longer rest periods. She adapted without resentment. She had practiced adaptation extensively. The Philippines appeared again in her thoughts, not as a destination, but as a reminder of agency exercised under fear. She recognized that moment as foundational. Without it, her life would have unfolded obediently rather than intentionally. That recognition filled her with quiet gratitude. She contacted the healer once years later, not for guidance, but for acknowledgement. The healer responded simply. He said bodies listen when people do. Anna appreciated the symmetry. She continued listening, even when the information was unpleasant. That honesty prevented denial. She prepared documents responsibly without dramatizing them. She shared access to information with people she trusted. Transparency reduced anxiety. She learned that preparation did not diminish hope. It supported it. Her sister became less afraid over time. Familiarity with uncertainty softened fear. Anna valued that outcome deeply. It felt like an unintended gift. She had not set out to inspire. She had set out to live accurately. Accuracy proved influential enough. She accepted that influence cautiously, without attachment. Attache me compliquait d'intention. She preferred clarity. That preference guided her choices consistently, regardless of prognosis. As years accumulated unpredictably, Anna found herself less interested in duration and more invested in texture. She noticed the quality of conversations, the honesty of exchanges, the absence of performance. She curated her environment accordingly. She removed obligations that drained her without resentment. She accepted help without embarrassment. That balance took practice. Pride resisted initially. She negotiated with it patiently. Her body eventually imposed stricter limits. She complied without framing it as defeat. Limits clarified priorities efficiently. She reduced travel. She deepened relationships. Matteo remained a constant variable. They evolved together without expectation of permanence. That flexibility preserved connection. She occasionally revisited the hospital where she had first received the prognosis, not out of nostalgia, but out of curiosity. The building had not changed. She had. That contrast confirmed her growth more effectively than any metric. She never celebrated anniversaries related to illness. She celebrated decisions. Decisions represented agency exercised under pressure. She encouraged others to mark similar moments privately. Public celebration felt unnecessary. She learned to recognize satisfaction without amplification. That restraint preserved meaning. When asked whether she believed the Philippines saved her life, she responded carefully. She said it saved her attention. Attention, she believed, shaped experience more than outcomes. That belief guided her behavior consistently. She lived attentively within constraint. That attentiveness transformed limitation into structure rather than obstruction. She accepted the eventual end without inviting it. Acceptance and invitation were not the same. She maintained that distinction rigorously. It allowed her to remain present without surrendering engagement. Presence remained her priority until it no longer could be. The story did not end when expected. It also did not conclude with resolution. Anna eventually became weaker in ways that required adjustment, not interpretation. She responded with the same method she had practiced for years. She adjusted deliberately. She communicated honestly. She disengaged selectively. She remained coherent. When conversations turned toward legacy, she redirected. Legacy implied ownership beyond participation. She preferred influence without obligation. People remembered her differently. She accepted that variance. Control had never been her objective. Integrity had. She maintained it quietly. Mateo stayed near without framing proximity as sacrifice. That choice mattered. Their relationship never required explanation. It functioned on alignment rather than definition. As Anna's energy narrowed, her focus sharpened. She chose presence over productivity, silence over commentary, observation over narration. She no longer needed to make meaning. Meaning had emerged organically through practice. She had chosen the Philippines believing she was choosing where to die. She had instead chosen how to live under pressure. That choice continued shaping her long after circumstances changed. When the end eventually approached, it did so without spectacle. Anna recognized it without fear. Familiarity with uncertainty had prepared her well. She did not review her life for lessons. She reviewed it for honesty. She found enough. The rest no longer mattered. Her story remained unresolved intentionally. Resolution belonged to observers. She had participated fully without demanding conclusion. That participation was sufficient.